Do you remember when Animal Kingdom opened?
Disney's Animal Kingdom, it's many, many things, but remember it's not a zoo!
Aside from the skeptical response from the zoological community regarding Disney moving animals from the savannah to Florida, a lot of people regarded Animal Kingdom's initial launch as kind of a mess. The original point of the park was to showcase animals from across the world, animals lost to time, and animals that existed only in the imagination. And well, two of those happened.
From its inception, Walt Disney World's Animal Kingdom was founded upon the premise of 3 distinct areas, featuring animals of the present, of the prehistoric age, and of ones found in myths and fables. This third land was called Beastly Kingdom. However, despite being included in marketing and even parts of the park itself, the land was never built.
Beastly Kingdom famously never got off the ground, with the plan being that Michael Eisner would get that park launched sometime in the future, right as soon as he finished California Adventure. Now, for those who don't know, Beastly Kingdom was the world of creatures that existed only in the imagination at Animal Kingdom. We were supposed to see unicorns and dragons and all wild stuff. It never came out. But even without the unicorns and dragons, Animal Kingdom had problems. Dinosaur USA, which was the Creatures from the Distant Past part of Animal Kingdom, it was a carnival. It's kind of wonky. It really only appealed to kids, young kids really. If you were old enough to get on Pirates of the Caribbean, you were probably too old for Dinosaur USA, except for one ride. There was one ride that is the key reason why anyone really wants to go to Dinosaur USA. Dinosaur, formerly Countdown to Extinction prior to the dinosaur theming, to date is the sole reason anyone really cares about the movie Dinosaur, or Aladar. It's undeniably dated, but definitely an enjoyable dark ride. Basically, you are going back into the past, and some scientists kind of finagle a few things, so you get to bring back an iguanodon from the end of the Cretaceous period to the present.
You follow the homing signal to the iguanodon, then I'll enlarge the transport field, and boom, you're back with one additional passenger extra large. And don't worry about that asteroid. You'll be in and out of there before it even breaks the atmosphere. Trust me, what could go wrong?
It's a fun little dark ride. You go through all these tight turns, you see these really cool animatronics that actually, for a while, I think are some of the scariest animatronics Disney World ever had. Right next to the traumatizing Snow White ride. Undeniably, it's dated. The ride is shaky, you rock back and forth, it's unstable, but it's enjoyable all the same. It features some of the only real jump scares at a Disney park, and there's a vibe to it, like a 90s eyewitness vibe. Bill Nye narrates in the waiting queue, like you hear his voice describing the end of the Cretaceous period and the asteroid that wiped out all the dinosaurs. If you grew up in the 90s, it is that vibe. Along with little Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego kind of feel to some of the introductory cutscenes. You know what I'm talking about?
How? That's proprietary. But the result is a breathtaking journey through a prehistoric world that will witness the most spectacular creatures to ever walk the earth.
It feels like it was made for me specifically, as a 9-year-old.
And then my teacher told me about this other book by a guy named Backer, and
It is the best example of 1/3 of Animal Kingdom's thesis. But soon, this ride will be extinct. If you've been to Animal Kingdom, you are well aware it has gone through multiple updates since its launch, to give people stuff to do, other than just go to the zoo and see these incredible animals that really exist.
Not a zoo!
Who cares about the wonders of nature, right? Let's see some rides. The first expansion that it had that was very significant was Avatar Land. I'm sorry, the Worlds of Pandora or whatever. It's Avatar Land. And that kind of fulfilled the quota of imagined creatures. I mean, you have dragons, sort of. You have alien dragons. I know they have a name. I don't care what the names are. Yeah, sure, you didn't see the dragon like on the front gate of this park when you walk into it, but hey, it's something. And you got one really great ride, and you got the Navi River Journey, which is a great place to cool off if it's hot outside. after waiting an hour to get into a ride that's basically nothing. But I digress. I'm not bitter or anything. I'm not angry at all. But then in 2023, at D23, Disney announced plans to replace Dinosaur USA with a place inspired by both Encanto and Indiana Jones, which, what do either of these have to do with animals, much less animals that have gone extinct? Like, is Indy going to go out and dig up some dinosaur bones or something?
I know we're searching for ways to extend the overall story of Animal Kingdom. Encanto and Indiana Jones are two of the most popular stories that we've ever told. Doesn't it feel like a natural fit for this park? It does.
It's probably just going to be a recreation of the Disneyland Indiana Jones ride, but that has nothing to do with dinosaurs either. And look, this sounds great. I want to go on these rides. Indiana Jones remains one of my all-time favorite films, and Encanto is some of the best stuff Disney's put out since ages ago. But none of this fits with the theming of the park. Animal Kingdom was designed to be one thing for about 3 decades, and it succeeded, albeit with some difficulty. It feels like with each update, Animal Kingdom has gone farther away from what it was supposed to be initially. The initial thesis is a memory, something nebulous and lost, as the park is folded into the general identity of Disney.
Disney's Animal Kingdom. The imagination of Disney. Gone wild.
But I think that's kind of true across the board for all of Disney to some extent or another. And look, I'm not saying Disney adding a few licensed properties is all that big a deal on a case-by-case basis. When Disney opened the original park, Disneyland, it opened with multiple rides based on established IP. The centerpiece of the park, the Sleeping Beauty Castle, was chosen over the more well-known Cinderella Castle because Walt hoped that the building would promote the then-upcoming Sleeping Beauty. It did not. Sleeping Beauty was a flop when it came out, in case you don't know. But it started the idea that Disney wants to market its IP using the park, or, in some cases, market the park with its IP. Great way to make money. You cross-pollinate. You get what I'm trying to say. Anyway, Disney as a company tends to hide its blemishes. And to Disney, a blemish often includes work that doesn't live up to expectations. Like Dinosaur, the movie Dinosaur. Not the ride Dinosaur, which is a great ride. Or the multiple movies Disney just deleted off Disney Plus for a tax write-off.
Over the last few days, Disney has been going on a purge. They have removed probably close to about 200 titles from Disney Plus here in the UK over the last few days. What we're seeing with this content purge, there is a load of films that have been removed.
They deleted the show Willow, which honestly I really like. I thought Willow was great, personally. They almost deleted Howard, a documentary about the late Howard Ashman, who was responsible for the music behind 3 of Disney's most successful movies: Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. Ashman also made one of the most gonzo 80s musicals, Little Shop of Horrors, which I love. But even before Disney deleted these films, Disney had neglected several of their old classics.
Whatever happened to my Karen could happen to you.
The Watcher in the Woods.
The Watcher in the Woods is a Disney horror film that is unavailable on Disney Plus. Pure nightmare fuel. Flopped at the box office. When Disney feels like something can be replaced, they replace it. And usually, they make a lot of money doing so. It's a business model that works, but it also comes at the price of creative endeavors of the past. It is simply just more apparent with their theme parks. But also, this video isn't really about Disney deleting its movies off Disney Plus. It's really about something more nebulous. This is about Disney shaving off the edges of its creative endeavors to create something that is a nebulous, solid Disney entity. Now, I want to say something right now at the top. It's because I have a lot of respect for Disney's Imagineers, artists, writers, animators, musicians, to name a few. They create meaningful art through the Disney system. Even if I don't always love their art, I'm not going to diminish their artistic achievements by calling what they are doing manufactured. I really want to separate Disney, the talent, from Disney, the company, because the company is making decisions that is flattening their artistic achievements and flattening everything to fit into a commodified mold. Because of that, I don't want to insult the artists. They're being commissioned by Disney to do a job. They're doing the best they can with what they have. No, what I'm going to criticize is the company. separate from creativity.
On January 31st, Mickey will be leaving.
Along.
Sleeping Beauty will go back to sleep. And Mowgli will go back to the jungle. Because on January 31st, Disney will stop selling the Jungle Book, Sleeping Beauty, and Fun and Fancy Free. So before they go back into the Disney vault for years to come, don't miss your chance to own these magical Disney videos before they disappear.
Disney employs IP as a marketing tool, as we mentioned, but does so in order to sell the idea of Disney. The art itself becomes a flat background to this, most apparent in the works that feel like they are produced by mandate. Now obviously many works are made by mandate. Frozen 2 was, and I would argue that this mess of a movie is better than the first movie. But some works feel like a mandate. They lack the juice. You know what I'm saying? Now I know a lot of people hear me say that and thought of Wish, which I actually was not thinking of. I haven't even seen Wish. I didn't even bother watching it. So I can't insult Wish, but I can insult a few other movies. Believe it or not, Wish is not the first example of Disney creating art to fit a mandate. I know, shocking. To everyone outside of the 90s anyway.
Aladdin, Jasmine, Iago, and the Genie.
Did you miss me?
Disney's The Return of Jafar.
Disney's Return of Jafar proved to be one of their most successful ventures in the 90s. In terms of return on investment, 4.6 million VHS copies were sold within a week. It grossed $300 million against a budget of $5 million. To date, Return of Jafar is one of the top-selling videos ever. Mind you, it never had a theatrical window. It was just straight to video. And this was a massive success for Disney, one which led to a glut of low-effort, direct-to-video sequels, all chasing Aladdin's success. And this defined Disney's brand for decades.
Pocahontas, Journey to a New World. A brand new world premiere movie. The Little Mermaid 2, Return to the Sea. Lady and the Tramp 2, Scamp's Adventure. Cinderella 2, Dreams Come True.
That is not to say that the sequels were the only thing Disney put out, but they defined what Disney was. If they had a success, they'd milk it.
Croc's New Groove. Bambi and the Great Prince of the Forest.
Leroy and Stitch.
This also led, I feel, to the overexposure of certain brands. Return of Jafar led to a pseudo-pilot for the Aladdin TV show, which ultimately led to Aladdin and the King of Thieves, which is pretty good. I will back that one up.
The Genie, brought to life again by the one and only Robin Williams.
It's a kinder, gentler genie. Look at it!
So a property like Aladdin lent itself well to Disney's new strategy. Not all of them fared so well. I think Lilo and Stitch or The Lion King, that works with this new strategy. But others, like say Hunchback of Notre Dame, don't. Most of these sequels try to fit a certain formula, either focusing on the kids of the heroes going on an adventure, a love story where any spares are paired off, a collection of rejected TV pilots, or the midquel, the most useless of all of them. And the problem here is that a lot of these stories feel either redundant or kind of contradictory to the original film's thesis. Hunchback 2 exists exclusively to give Quasimodo a love interest, which no one needed to do, because the whole point of the first film is Quasimodo finding self-acceptance. It was not about finding love, it was about loving oneself. But we got to pair off Quasi with someone, so let's make an OC. And we'll make a very obvious, transparent message, too. I mean, we went from bigotry against the Romani people, religious fanaticism, perversion, to a magician who steals a bell with gemstones in it, which I don't know if you know how bells work, but the soft gemstones inside the bell don't look like they're gonna stay nice and shiny for long with the thing rocking back and forth.
Who are these clowns?
The original film had to be commodified to sell commercial product, and that itself was already a commodification of a great work of literature, The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. Already compromises made on top of compromises. It's a shock that Hunchback of Notre Dame even exists in its current form, because it pretty much stretched the Disney brand to its breaking point in the 90s. Hunchback 2 was like that stretching being snapped back, pulled back into what is acceptable for Disney. You went too far, let's take it back. That's how it feels, and you can tell, because it kind of managed to kill any interest Disney had in marketing Hunchback of Notre Dame after the film's original release. And look, certain movies work well. Aladdin, Stitch, Hercules, you can continue giving them adventures forever. But Quasimodo, his story's done.
In an all-new, action-packed adventure.
He's not a swashbuckler, he's a man with a singular challenge that he overcame over the course of his film. Some stories need to end at a natural endpoint. I feel like something like The Little Mermaid is also pretty curious, because the spin-offs are strange. The show, the animated series, and the prequel movie take place before the original film. In this prequel content, Ariel is in her most marketable form. She has her fins, her tail, she sings, she's floating in the water, there's fish around. Very, very marketable. The first sequel, though, inverts the formula of the original film, using the same iconography from that first film in reverse. 2 diminishing returns. It forces Ariel to act very strangely for the whole film to even work. She has to become an inverted King Triton, which just doesn't make sense, even considering the threat of Ursula's crazy sister. In all cases, the film refuses to move past that first film. It just inverts it. And because of that, it creates marketable, familiar content that does not feel as good as the first time they got it. This is what's also wrong with the Disney Princess line.
From Disney. Disney princess dolls are all new.
Disney continues to market its princesses as its ever-growing catalog of role models, initially inspired by the European fairy tales that Walt Disney originally drew upon.
Imagine once upon a time happened every day. Imagine you were a Disney princess.
And yeah, Snow White, Cinderella, and Aurora are all idealized characters who could exist as a role model of sort. I'd argue, though, Aurora isn't even the main character of Sleeping Beauty. It's the 3 fairies who do everything and whose emotional journeys are centered in the film. We see them raise this girl, take care of this girl, and fight evil, using the heroes as proxies for their abilities. That's more of a hero's journey than Aurora or Prince Philip, but what do I know? All I'm saying is, where's all the shirts with the 3 fairies on it? Why Aurora? She's sleeping for half the movie. She's barely there. But again, the brand trumps the film. The brand that Aurora represents is more powerful than the actual protagonists of the movie, who get nothing. What are you going to do? Well, Maleficent gets some stuff too, I guess. The princesses are the more commercially viable options. Pretty princes and princes? Need that. Fairies? Whatever. But everything changed during the 90s. Disney creatives pushed to create characters who weren't simply idealized role models that kids could project onto. They created fully fleshed out characters with wants and goals, and Disney corporate tried to stop this from happening at every turn. I'm not even kidding. Howard Ashman had to push to put Part of Your World into The Little Mermaid.
I remember the Part of Your World song had animated, and Jeffrey sat in the movie theater, and afterwards Jeffrey said, we got to cut that song. It's boring.
Jeffrey Katzenberg wanted to rip the scene out of the film. I mean, what would you expect from the guy who thought Quibi was a good idea? But I digress. Lingering on personal journeys of these characters, that's not something Disney corporate wanted, because they were afraid that audiences would get bored.
The memo was all about Howard taking too much time and asking for redos and costing the studio time and money. And maybe he needed to be fired.
Everything you love about Disney's Renaissance has nothing to do with Disney corporate. It has everything to do with the creatives who were undercut at every possible turn. People don't realize how much creatives have to push to get anything done. Further, after the success of The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, Katzenberg, suddenly impressed with everything Howard Ashman did, pushed for another big award-winning movie to get made. The studio started work on 2 different productions, a B project that the company had very little faith in, and their Prestige project. The Prestige project turned out to be Pocahontas, and that little runty project people had tossed onto as punishment, well, that was The Lion King.
The filmmakers originally envisioned a more, shall we say, historically rooted film, but the studio head Jeffrey Katzenberg pushed it to what he considered to be more commercial. Pocahontas was originally closer in age to the historical Pocahontas. It was even kicked around for a while that the Powhatan characters, yes, would speak entirely in native Powhatan, and Pocahontas would have to go through the process of learning English. But in the end, most of the decisions that dragged the movie down into mediocrity were born out of Katzenberg's desire to force a Best Picture contender like Beauty and the Beast.
Further, many princesses no longer embodied the European iconography that the original one did. Pocahontas obviously didn't, nor does Mulan, who isn't even a princess in her film, I might add. Nor does Jasmine, for that matter, who in fact embodied a lot of iconography that was fetishized by Europe.
The only other Disney princess arguably as sexualized as Pocahontas was Princess Jasmine, and the year after that, Esmeralda. Funny that.
A lot of the iconography did lift from imagery that Europe commodified and stole. Maybe it's a summary for the Disney program. What are you going to do? For the sake of our discussion, let's focus on how they presented in marketing. Because in marketing, Disney tries to position all these characters as princesses, along with the European classic prince cycle, the core three. But they can't conform without compromising what makes their character the character. So they just kind of dump them in there. Pocahontas often appears in her traditional outfit from the movie, and is often hidden behind the billowing dresses of her peers. Same with Jasmine, same with Mulan, and now, same with Moana. And while the other Disney princesses wear their most extravagant ballroom dresses, they're just wearing their clothes. And we're just not supposed to notice that Belle isn't even wearing what she often wears in the whole movie. She wears the one dress she wears in the one scene, and then never again. The characters get flanderized in their later appearances in marketing collateral. But none suffers as badly, I feel, as Belle.
Everyone remembers when one of Disney's most beloved heroines brought an entire castle back to life. Now, Belle is back in 3 new wonderful stories.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't. But I've considered it.
At least Pocahontas maintains her personality. At least Jasmine does stuff. At least Mulan is still an action hero. Belle? Oh my god.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
This one actually gets me angry. So, you want to see some authentic frustration? You're going to get some authentic frustration. Okay, let's talk about Belle. Let's talk about Belle in all the Disney follow-ups and how she's treated horribly in everything. We're not going to talk about live action right now. We're just going to talk about in animation. Let's talk about it. In the original film, Beauty and the Beast, Belle is this confident young woman who just likes reading. She has her priorities, her father, her books, her hopes of seeing something more, and being with the Beast gets in the way of these. People often discuss the original film as a Stockholm Syndrome allegory, but the reality is very different. It's not Stockholm Syndrome at all. I really don't like that stereotype.
That hurts!
If you'd hold still, it wouldn't hurt as much.
Well, if you hadn't have run away, this wouldn't have happened.
If you hadn't frightened me, I wouldn't have run away.
When Belle is held captive, she doesn't just slowly grow to admire the Beast by proxy, by virtue of just sitting there in one location for too long. No, she maintains the same personhood in captivity, and the Beast changes to meet her. And because of the relationship changing, because the Beast is changing, Belle's outlook on the Beast slowly changes. Belle never changes for him. He changes because of her. Not for her, because of her. It's the inverse of what everyone always says. And look, when Belle is allowed to leave to save her dad, she leaves. And the Beast allows her to leave, knowing that this decision will maybe result in them never seeing each other again, potentially. And she goes, because her priority is her father. He has to earn her trust, not the other way around. He releases her, knowing she'll leave. And when she comes back, that consummates their love. It's her choice. And it's so clear that the original film isn't Stockholm Syndrome after you see that Christmas sequel to the original film, because that is clearly Stockholm Syndrome.
Come on. Come on.
I have no idea what the fuck they were thinking with this movie. They make Belle into this weird role model of joy and happiness who exists only to make the beasts feel safe and happy and love Christmas, and the beast, rather than changing to meet Belle, is just a stubborn, abusive bastard. And to make things more confusing, this takes place during the Something's There number. You know, that whole scene where the beast is actively changing his character arc, becoming softer and warmer, and coming out of his own depression and anxiety and self-hatred. That whole sequence. And yet here, he's like stuck in the mud. He's further back here than he ever was in the original film.
You said you'd never leave.
I wasn't trying to leave.
He is so much worse than at any point in the first film. From a meta perspective, it's hard to say why the story is written this way. But from a marketing standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world. Let's ignore the fact that Howard Ashman was no longer alive at this point because he passed away tragically of AIDS shortly after finishing work on Beauty and the Beast. Let's also understand that Alan Menken was not working this either. Let's also understand that all of the creatives on Beauty and the Beast were working on different projects at this time, and that the Enchanted Christmas was handled by the Toon Studio, the B team, basically. Let's ignore that. Because the core problem is not the creatives involved or the lower budget or the lack of really talented creatives. No, these problems are made because of business decisions that impacted and jump-started the production of this film. The fact this film exists is proof that business got in the way of creativity. Because they're chasing after the money Return of Jafar got them, they scrambled this nonsense together. And what did we get? We get a marketable version of Beast, a marketable version of Belle, the role model that Disney wants all their princesses to conform to, and the Beast in his most stereotypical beastly way, with all of the other components that made these characters so lovable and so memorable shaved off in order to sell the product, the idea of Beauty and the Beast. And as a result, you get shit. It maintains what Disney thinks audiences would remember about the film, that they're at odds with each other. Problem is, they shaved off what people actually liked about the film, that they grow to love each other. Most of these sequels default to the standard version of characters audiences would expect. Even with the good stuff, they do this. Aladdin and Jasmine, at the end of the first Aladdin film, are flying off on the carpet to get married. And when the Return of Jafar happens, they're not married yet. They're wearing their old outfits. Aladdin, despite being engaged to a princess, still wears his street rag stuff. Did no one give him a tailor? Did they just let this poor boy get like sunburned on the shoulders for the rest of his eternity? Like, give the guy like a shirt or something, not just a vest. The entire animated series, they're still waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting to get married until King of Thieves comes out and they finally propose the marriage. They have the whole big ceremony. It's the whole gag of the film is that they're finally getting married, even though they already got married at the end of the first film. So what does this timeline look like? Who knows? Who cares? Disney sure doesn't, because all they cared about was selling a version of Aladdin that audiences would resonate with, that they were familiar with, that they'd love. And then those stuff that people don't really care about. Fox and the Hound 2. No one cares about Fox and the Hound 2. Fox and the Hound 1, people barely remember, unless you grew up with it, in which case it's stuck in your memory forever, but because it's traumatizing and sad and depressing and I cried. But that's not important. This movie is about two friends who are torn apart by circumstances outside their control. And so therefore the sequel is a midquel that takes place before the halfway point of the film, where they're the best of friends, because it's easier to market friends being funny with each other and Reba McEntire than it is to show the horrors of society stripping people of their joy and happiness. Fox and the Hound is not talked about a lot, but that film is heavy. That's a heavy, dark, sad movie that people just ignore all the time. Again, because it's harder to market. So obviously, The Enchanted Christmas, and by extension, Belle's Magical World, which is the biggest piece of shit Disney's ever put out, focus on when the Beast and Belle aren't together. Because Disney Corporate understands this, that the Beast and Belle aren't together, but they have to be together. Until they, and they can't get together into the ballroom scene, but they're just sort of in that limbo until then. And this falls apart when we look at Belle, because look, just look at Belle. And listen, what you got to understand is that Belle in these sequels, or these midquels, isn't Belle. She's not the protagonist of one of Disney's greatest artistic achievements. She's Belle, the Disney princess. She's Belle, a model of virtue, patience. She's a role model. This is all clear in Belle's magical world, though, again, the worst piece of shit Disney's ever put out, because it's broken into these little segments where she teaches moral lessons to teach kids something. Obviously, this is a rejected TV show, and it just feels so patronizing and safe. It feels like the kind of thing you put on the Disney Junior channel for like your 3-year-old who really just wants to replay Beauty and the Beast over and over again. But it's the kind of thing that when they turn, 4 and they gain cognitive thinking skills, they watch and they go, what the fuck is this shit? Do I seem a little annoyed? I might be a little annoyed. I don't know. Let me know. Let me know if I seem annoyed to you about this.
Disney invites your family to experience all the magic of Beauty and the Beast.
Deep down, he has a good heart.
And discover something about life.
Ultimately, they wanted to take this complex, nuanced character and turn her into a role model. Fit her into the mold of the Disney princess line. And if you think I'm exaggerating, don't forget at a certain point, Disney just planned to just release direct-to-video movies that were just Disney Princess shorts, teaching kids lessons.
Disney Princess Enchanted Tales, featuring all new stories, songs, and lessons.
Disney Princess Enchanted Tales Follow Your Dreams, yes, that's the whole title, was the first in a line of videos aimed for kids that would feature a number of Disney princesses teaching young girls moral lessons. It was also the last of this line, because it sucked.
Hey, you found me. Hi there, it's me, Jasmine. You will never believe what just happened.
The one segment with Jasmine is particularly terrible because Jasmine, the same young girl who stood up to sexism and disparity, now exists to teach patience. You know, kids, just good things will come if you just sit back and wait. Like Jasmine, who ran away from home and forcibly changed the doctrine of her country so she can have freedom to make decisions for herself. Now, granted, it does have a scene where Jasmine sends her tiger to a bunch of children for misbehaving, and there's small benefits in an otherwise unremarkable piece of media, and there's no reason to discuss it outside of how it functioned in the general Disney branding.
Well, we were robbed by John Lasseter, which is still better than the other things he did. The first post shares a Variety article about Enchanted Tales, stating that Enchanted Tales Follow Your Dreams will feature new music and stories with the gold versions of Sleeping Beauty, Jasmine, and Belle. However, the following day it is reported that the special will only feature new stories with Jasmine and Aurora. This is the first mention of Belle being cut. Throughout April, May, and June, there is a steady flow of merchandise. But things get a little crazy starting on June 27th, where it is announced that Disney is ending production on all direct-to-video sequels.
Audiences can tell when something is manufactured gunk meant to just occupy a space on a kid's bookshelf or something like that, as opposed to genuine art that means something to its audience. The only problem is, now it's putting that disposable gunk that was on VHS shelves, and they're putting it on the big screen, or on streaming. Keep in mind this, Disney often used the imagery of its princesses in marketing collateral, but rarely in their films, until the second Wreck-It Ralph movie.
Hi. Whoa, ladies, I can explain.
The princesses all appear, but they're at their most flat. They're sight gags and quips meant to make fun of the princesses without engaging with what made each of these characters compelling.
Oh, are you guys okay? Should I call the police?
These are people's favorite characters in media. It's characters people grew up with, and they're just here as a joke.
Ach, lang me your lumdieke me a moose nail lee your gun away a teardrop in his eye. Hey, she back wee lassie.
Honestly, the scene where they're just all talking gives me psychic damage because they can only repeat famous lines, reference events from the movie. It's flat and boring, and I hate it. And Wreck-It Ralph 2 is actually terrible. And they're only on screen to remind you the original film exists, and the only conclusion you get from watching it is that you want to see the original film. Look, say what you will about Frozen 2, and you can say a lot. At least it did something different. It progressed the narrative from point A to point B in a way where the characters were in different places by the end of the film. It went beyond just gags about the original film. The closest it comes to a gag about the first film is when Elsa cringes hearing someone sing Let It Go. Like, that is good, because it shows that the characters are growing, that they're maturing. It honestly feels a lot like how Lion King 2 or Aladdin King of Thieves felt. adding a new narrative with familiar characters where they undergo an arc which is separate from their old arc. They progress. It is also a movie that's not stuck in the mold of the Disney sequels before. The same is true for Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure, which feels more in line with shows like She-Ra or Korra in terms of structure, with swashbuckling, betrayal, love, and of course lots of magic. It feels like a fairly underrated follow-up to the original film, which itself I feel is fairly underrated. The characters are still recognizable from the original film, and are continuing their lives past the events of that first film, and delve into both the original film's lore, while also introducing new elements to make things interesting. It's good. But the thing is, unlike Frozen 2, Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure does follow a mold, one established back in the 90s. Aladdin, Hercules, Little Mermaid, Tarzan all turned into shows with multiple episodes. The only thing here is that the original film takes place over the course of a day, and thus any events that take place during the original film would just be cramped into a single day. So it has to follow after the first film. And again, because before the first film, Rapunzel's just hanging out in a tower, and you can't have a Rapunzel film without Rapunzel, so you gotta go afterwards. It's only due to necessity of the plot. They didn't make it a mid-quel or prequel like Little Mermaid, the TV show. They were restricted by the limitations of the original art, and as a result made something worth watching. And let's also be fair. I don't think that either Frozen 2 or Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure are reflective of modern Disney learning anything. Moana 2, it's lifting a page out of all the old Disney sequels. It's just taking a few episodes of a TV show and compressing them into a movie. And that made the worst stuff from that era too. Belle's Magical World, in Atlantis 2, all these things were just compressed TV episodes. I really want Moana 2 to be good, but I have no faith it will, because what it's doing is following a formula we know doesn't work. Further, most of the Disney sequels before had the decency to be direct to video, so you could at least not pay the full price of admission. You could borrow from the library for your kids. But what excuse does Wreck-It Ralph 2 have for delivering a worse version of the first film and Disney media than the direct-to-video sequels? And look, undeniably, Disney follows formulas for success, and they do it well from a business standpoint. Disney would recycle animation back in the 70s all the time. It uses prior successes to market upcoming projects. No shock there. It uses successful IP to market the parks and the cruise lines. Why wouldn't it? Of course, that's a selling point. If it was just the Caribbean cruise or whatever, you wouldn't care. But you put some pirates in there, now it's the Pirates of the Caribbean cruise, and all of a sudden you're interested. Is there a Pirates of the Caribbean cruise? I don't like cruises, so I have no idea if that's a thing Disney does. But the point is, Disney follows formulas. That's why Disney's entire slates for films for the next several years, across Pixar, across its animation, Star Wars and Marvel, it's just sequels with maybe one or two original IPs along the way, but it's mostly sequels right now. But it's just as important to remember that some properties just disappear over time because they aren't usually successful. So the balance is we have tons of sequels, but certain things just seem neglected. A good example of this is Tron.
The NCOM 511 computer, center of the most calculating intelligence on Earth.
Tron was an original film in the 80s that disappeared for years. Disney didn't market it, Disney didn't merchandise it, but then, all of a sudden, Tron comes back.
I was paged last night. Came from your dad's office at the arcade. The number's been disconnected for 20 years.
And then it's gone again. Until in China, they build a big Tron roller coaster that's really successful. It's so successful that they bring it to Disney World. And now all of a sudden we're getting Tron 3. I'm not saying that Disney is trying to cross-pollinate its marketing material and collateral, but, you know, I don't think we get Tron 3 without that Tron roller coaster. Some properties, though, disappear for even longer, and some of them are pretty big names. Yeah, sure, it's them to take it off the ice every so often, but some are pretty big you haven't heard in a while. Winnie the Pooh hasn't had a big production since Christopher Robin, and before that, the underperforming 2011 film. Blood and Honey and Chinese censorship has done more to keep Pooh in conversation than Disney has. However, Disney also understands every property is someone's favorite film. and they capitalize on that too. Lesser known properties are sometimes sprinkled into their productions to add an extra layer of dimension to a product. Something like, oh, I haven't seen it in ages. I didn't know they're referencing that. Sometimes it's strange, like the Horned King from the Black Cauldron showing up in a Tokyo Disney walkthrough ride, or Nightmare Before Christmas showing up in the original Kingdom Hearts, which, by the way, this was before the Hot Topic Disney goth explosion in the mid-2000s. We didn't get much Nightmare Before Christmas before the mid-2000s. We got some, but very minimal. But even when they do that, there's a flattening effect, and something is lost in translation every time. Disney understands they need the imagery of this underrated property to trigger nostalgia, but they don't always understand the fundamental elements that made it so good. It's blended into this generic, nebulous Disney entity that already exists.
Maybe we're missing some ingredients. Let's try adding memory.
I don't know how familiar you guys are with Disney rides at all, or maybe some of you are, or the parks. You might know a few. But at the end of the night, they always put on these shows. Usually it's fireworks, whatever. But if you ask any Disney park enthusiast what the best one is, they usually say Fantasmic. Or at least the ones I know say that. I don't know. It's basically a big stage show that includes water displays, fireworks, and projections, and accompaniment with live performers to tell a story inspired by the Sorcerer's Apprentice sequence from Fantasia, with two big diversions. One part is a showcase of various memorable Disney movies, from Beauty and the Beast to The Lion King. The newest iteration has a scene from Frozen 2, making one of the few times Disney acknowledges Frozen 2. The fact that Frozen 2 has better music than the first Frozen. Yeah, I said it. Frozen 2. Much better than first Frozen. Just saying. But what I want to talk about is the second half. In the second half, Disney villains all start teaming up just to fucking kill Mickey Mouse. And you have the Evil Queen, Ursula, Jafar, Maleficent, Hades, Cruella de Vil, Scar, Chernabog, and Frollo. They all join up to kill Mickey Mouse, and Mickey responds in the way you would imagine by just electrocuting them with lightning bolts spraying off of Excalibur. This is a thing that happens in a giant snake and a giant dragon, and it's really spectacular to watch, even though you know it's obviously aiming for kids. It's like some Kingdom Hearts nonsense, but it's a fun bit of nonsense, and it's cool and spectacular. And I mean, sure, Mickey Mouse frying Jafar, Hades, Maleficent, that makes sense, because they can take the electricity, they can take the heat, but it seems like overkill when you're shocking Cruella de Vil with, like, the power of Zeus. Now, if you heard me describe this, you're probably thinking of one of two things. That's some Kingdom Hearts bullshit, and I need to see this, or that sounds like something made to be visually spectacular without much real thought to the meat of the narrative, and both are true, I feel. But here's the thing. When was the last time you saw Frollo in any mainstream Disney thing, period? Hunchback of Notre Dame has had barely any reps in Hunchback 2. And now we're getting Frollo as a core character in this Disney spectacular that's currently airing right now in Disney World at this very moment in Hollywood studios. You can go right now to Disney World and see Frollo on a big water display with fireworks behind him. Except when you think about it for a second and go, why is Frollo headlining a mean production at Disney? Why is this religious fanatic who holds trials to hunt witches just fine working with Greek gods and witches? Seems a little contradictory, doesn't it, Frollo? Frollo ultimately serves in this production the same function that the Disney served in Wreck-It Ralph 2. Frollo is aligned with the Disney villains brand, a marketing IP, and as such is flattened with all his unique features brushed away in the name of one core thing: sell the idea of Disney villains. Sell the idea of Disney princesses. Sell. Sell Mickey Mouse. Sell Mickey Mouse and Friends. Sell. Oh, actually, if you think, is Mickey Mouse even important in Disney World anymore? Mickey Mickey Mouse used to be the central figure of Disney. Ignoring Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, Mickey was Walt Disney's first major success, appearing in theatrical shorts for decades.
And a guest in my own domicile.
Even as other Disney films became successful, Mickey would continue to play a central role in Disney-related media. And yes, modern Mickey Mouse has taken on a more retro look, taking on the sensibilities of yesteryear. But since the 90s, Disney has done less and less and less with Mickey Mouse. And you may think, oh, well, what do you mean by that? Well, consider this. For a while, starting in the late 90s, Mickey Mouse would regularly appear on straight-to-video original films. Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas and its sequel, The Three Musketeers, name a few. He was on The House of Mouse, a show that ran old Disney shorts, while also featuring cameos from various Disney characters. Again, flat depictions aimed for young audiences, but I digress. Still, Mickey was the central figure. He was the maitre d'. He was the host. He was the owner of the club. And around Kingdom Hearts, he became the Yoda with Kingdom Hearts.
Say, fellas, did somebody mention the door to darkness?
Fantasia 2000 featured him as a major character, but what about since then? Well, there's Mickey's Clubhouse, his Mouse Clubhouse, a show for preschoolers that no one over the age of 3 will watch. There's Mickey Mouse, that retro animated show that I think has some good style, but no one really watches, outside of clips online. And outside of that, Mickey Mouse has been sidelined in his own productions. Outside of projects aimed for very young kids, Mickey Mouse, the core character of Disney, has appeared less and less and less. And if he appears at all, you see his head shape. You don't hear his voice, you don't know what his personality is, he just sort of has a head, and that's it.
Oh boy, I love a reunion!
Whoa! Has the melon been a thing the whole time I've been gone, or...?
No, that's new.
He's not really a character anymore. Kingdom Hearts is arguably the only project that features Mickey Mouse in any capacity on a regular basis that gets any mainstream attention. And even then, they only do that by reinterpreting Mickey into their cosmology. The way Disney does this with its main properties, it's amazing. And it's not like what they do with, Marvel or Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm and Marvel Studios, for all their faults, know that if you just throw their characters into a plot and didn't take the opportunity to further their stories or deliver on what fans expect, people will get pissed. Complain all you want about the specifics. But at no point has Luke Skywalker ever appeared in something that was not eventful outside of Book of Boba Fett. I'm not over that one either. No, there's a difference between what Lucasfilm and Marvel Studios are doing because they build their narratives on a timeline, a strictly followed, adhered to timeline that offers a cementing of events. But with Disney, that's not the case. They have multiple IP they pick and choose on occasion to feature. So they can just uproot a character from any point in the story and showcase that iteration of them at any point in time. They take the version, though, that audiences are usually most familiar with, an ageless, stagnant iteration of a fictional character, and boil them down to the most identifiable traits, to the elimination of everything else. And of course, none of this eliminates the original films, except, no, as we mentioned, The Watcher in the Woods and Tower of Terror, and a couple weeks ago I made a video about Disney horror films, watch it. 2 horror films Disney made. There's no release for it on Disney+. In fact, you can't even get a physical copy of it really anymore. Tower of Terror especially. It's egregious because there's not even a version available to purchase right now. It's a component of Disney cinematic history. The first film based on a Disney ride before Pirates and before the Mission to Mars ride, and you can't buy it. Which takes us back to the beginning of all this. The Disney parks, their rides. Things that can indeed be stripped down, crushed, torn down, removed. What was once designed with intentionality and purpose is being removed to create a marketable front of recognizable IP, things you can recognize, in order to sell you a product. Animal Kingdom was created to be a place designed to create the joys of the animal world for families to enjoy, but now it's a collection of intellectual properties that muddy the original theming and intention of the location. Whatever Disney can't use to further the brand of Disney, it disposes of, or at least ignores. But what if there's something Disney can't really establish as a brand on its own, but the brand is too big to just shove away and ignore? Well, you get the Muppets.
Hello, Mickey? Mickey, this is Kermit the Frog here.
Yeah, well, there's been a little mix-up here.
The Muppets and the Henson Company have a long, complicated history. This video is not the place to go over all of that, but there is good videos for that. But the point is this. Currently, the Muppets are owned by the Mouse. This partnership started off with promise. Hollywood Studios got a new Muppet-released exhibit with the promise of rides to come.
I'd like to invite all you dreamers to go down to the Chinese theater.
Multiple movies came out featuring the Muppets under Disney, most notably Muppets Christmas Carol and Muppets Treasure Island, which I think are fantastic. The deal between the Henson Company and Disney fizzled in the 2000s, but Disney bought the company and bought the rights to the Muppets. And then nothing. Disney sat on it for several years. No new rides. They wouldn't rerun the old show. And when they did rerun it, wouldn't air at normal times so people could actually watch. You get these cheap-for-made TV specials, yeah, but they were underwhelming. Things were stagnant until 2011 when The Muppets came out. It felt like a prestige picture, one that would put these iconic characters back on top. And it did, briefly. There was a short-lived adult drama for The Muppets that felt really misguided. There was a Muppets movie that fizzled out. It was a bit of a flop, I think. Well, not a flop. It was a slight box office disappointment, but that was enough for Disney to shelve it. There were some Disney Plus specials, whatever. Muppets Mayhem just came out, and that was on for one season, and it was canceled. Disney keeps trying to do something with the Muppets, to turn it into a big intellectual property. But there's this one problem. They're only doing what Jim Henson did, and in doing so, are doing the one thing Jim Henson never wanted to do. Be uncreative.
He had so many ideas and so many things he wanted to do. And so the idea of time, I think, was very much on Jim's mind always.
They keep trying to turn the Muppets into either a cinematic franchise like Star Wars or Marvel, or turn it into a commodified property like Mickey Mouse and the Disney princesses. But the Muppets are too esoteric, too postmodern, and too self-reflective for that. They occupy this strange limbo in pop culture. And while they're not fitting into Disney's marketable strategy, they're always relevant. They're kind of in a weird place with the internet, especially, where they take hold of these iconic characters and be creative with them in a way that Jim Henson probably would be proud of if he could profit from it, I think. But I digress.
Hey, Sal. Make it quick. It's my day off. I have finally done it. You've done what? I, Kermit the Frog, have finally achieved my dreams of opening a ramen shop.
Still, they're always relevant, and they're so relevant Disney has to do something with them. But Disney doesn't know how to do anything with them that's nearly as creative as what people online are doing with them already.
Okay, but this last one is really the one that stands out here. Bring up 9/11. What's so confusing about that? Well, that's just it. There's no joke. It just says bring up 9/11.
So, what happens now? Is there any hope? Yeah, I'd say there's some hope. Recently, Disney replaced its Tarzan walkthrough in Disney World with what the thing originally was, an attraction based on the Swiss Family Robinson. And that's a fairly old series of movies Disney made back in the day based on the stories of Robinson Crusoe. It's surprisingly atypical for Disney to do something like that. Take a new property and replace it with an old property, especially something as old and not as well known as the Swiss Family Robinson, and turn it into a major attraction. A walkthrough attraction, yes, but an attraction at the biggest park in Orlando nonetheless. We started in the parks and keep coming back to the parks, but I feel like the parks are the most indicative of where Disney's marketing is. If Wish's failure is indicative of anything, it's that Disney's drive to regurgitate its prior successes at its audiences doesn't work. But I don't think that's a problem with Wish from a creative standpoint. Wish had a lot of creatives working on that. They did a lot of great ideas. These are issues at the corporate level. The film is marketed to appeal to those who grew up loving Disney films. Undeniably so. It's the 90s at a bigger scale. 90s sequels, I should say, at a bigger scale. But the company has learned very little, clearly. It's always the creatives who push through at times like these. People forget Little Mermaid, Disney's first success in decades. The 70s and 80s in that time, dark period of history. Following the death of Walt Disney, they had no idea what they were doing. And sure, the parks did fine, but their films were messy, to put it mildly, and weren't successful. Many are cult classics now, but at the time were flops on release. People don't realize that the creative team behind The Little Mermaid were people who made a failed Broadway musical, Smile. Howard Ashman, Jodie Benson. They were all just rejects from Broadway that jumped ship to Disney and made something incredible, being allowed to use Disney's resources to tell a great story, and despite the company's pressures, made something great. Disney's best successes lately have been on television, where they've spent the least amount of time micromanaging their properties. Gravity Falls and The Owl House remain beloved, but both of them were made despite Disney constantly trying to micromanage.
Page 6. Please revise Seuss's line about dressing as a giant teddy bear. It may call to mind the people who dress up as stuffed animals as a furry fetish. Please revise Poop Face as it comes across as a replacement for Shit Face. Please revise Chub Pup on t-shirt. Chub as a sexual connotation. Bottles will be spun. This implies they are playing spin the bottle. We don't want to send the wrong message to our audience.
But they stuck to their guns and made a really great property, despite the pressures of the Disney Corporation. But none of that changes the sweeping corporate decisions the company makes. The company will purely act based on marketing data and what they think the company needs to do to make money, but it doesn't make good movies always. These decisions based in marketing are not always reliable, creative choices. And the creatives can tell you that. And when the creatives get their way, they make movies that are good. When they don't, they don't. The only way Disney moves forward is if the creatives ignore their bosses and make the stories that they know they need to make within the parameters Disney corporate sets, but pushing forward beyond that. And I don't have faith it's going to happen with every production, but I think when it does happen, you're going to get something magical.
Ah, where's Miss Piggy? Mickey Mouse!